Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh my god, that was the biggest yawn ever. I was totally fine before starting the live, and then I started yawning. That's so insane. Anyways, welcome everybody. Another episode of It's a Matter of Life or Death. I am your host, Josue, and here we are. Third Thursday of the month. Let me move this down here. Third Thursday of the month. We're talking about scams. This is the third week. I already said it, but I can't believe it. It's already almost June. Oh my god. I promise you guys. I was not yawning at all before this, but it's that 5 o'clock feeling. uh, what was I gonna say? Sorry, I'm just getting a couple of messages right now because I put my out of office on. I'm going on vacation. I'm so excited. It's been a while since I've been on. It's been since March since I've been on vacation, so that's quite a while for me. Not really. I'm just kidding. I don't go on vacation that often. My budget does not approve of that, so don't let me lie to you. But yeah, I won't be here for the Thursday. Maybe I'll just do it on Facebook. I'm traveling on a book bag, and currently my book bag's filled to the brim, and I can't fit my laptop in there, so I won't be able to do YouTube, but I'll still be able to do Facebook. So catch me in Spanish on Facebook. But I'll try. I'll see if I could get a laptop or something out there, and then try to do it on YouTube. But you guys already know the deal. I won't take too much of your time today because I have a couple more things, a couple errands to run before I wrap up my stay here in the United States for the week. And then, so yeah, and also not much information to do today. Just a couple of scam prevention tips. As you guys know, we've been talking about scams this month. So to end, not necessarily to end, because to wrap it up, because next week, of course, we always do the last one and it's a recap. But to hit on the third week, we're gonna talk about tips on preventing scams. The first week we talked about introduction to scams, a couple new scams that are going on. Second, or not only just a couple new scams that are going on, but also scams that have been around for a while. Second week we talked about what's it called? What happens to you if you get scammed, because everybody's been scammed. I told you guys about a story how I got scammed. If you guys want to hear about that story, go watch our videos on YouTube. And then last but not least, this week we're going to talk about tips on how not to get scammed, because we all know sometimes after hearing last week, sometimes after you do get scammed, it's really hard for you to get your money back, especially in this new day and age where it's Zelle and Apple Cash and Venmo, all those electronic transaction market type of situation. So it's very important to understand the risk that you're taking every time you send money. So matter of fact, we could just start off with that, because I always like to talk about the evolution of our phones. And one of the new scams, thanks to our phones being so evolved, is sending money to the wrong person. And it's so easy nowadays to request money from somebody via the internet. Somebody will get on the internet and request money from somebody, and it's too easy for that person to be like, yep, I have the money, I'll send it to you. Or it's also just as easy as saying like, nope, I have the money, but I'm not gonna send it to you. So here are some tips. First and foremost, when it comes to sending money through an online service, whether it's Zelle, Apple Cash, Venmo, Cash App, you have to, I always say, verify, double check, triple check. Sit there and talk to the person while on the phone with you. Like, hey, what's the phone number that I have to send it to? If the phone number is, if they verify the phone number in front of you, then send it, and they could verify that they received the funds at that time as well. So it's always good to do it in front of the person. Every time I send money to somebody via Zelle, Cash App, or Venmo, I verify immediately. Like, hey, did you get the money? Because I sent it. And if it's out of my hands, it's out of my problems. So, but that's just one of them. That's just an example of the kind of tips that you're gonna get today. Because again, we're in a day and age where if those scams take place and you send the money out, it is gonna be very, very difficult for you to get your money back. And as unfortunate as that sounds, that's what scammers live off. You know, they prey off of people's not necessarily willingness to give the money, but they're prey on people's kindness. They're prey on people's goodwills. You know, scammers are out there looking for a reaction. So usually when scammers reach out to you, they're gonna try to scare you. They're gonna say something is past due, or maybe you've been in trouble with this program or whatever service you have. You owe this much. That gathers a reaction out of somebody. Naturally, you're like, oh snap! But you're telling me my light bill's due. When are you gonna turn them off? And then they'll tell you, they'll prey on that, and they're like, well, in order for us not to turn it off, you have to send this much money to this number, and so on and so on. Again, and the best tip I could give you here is before you send any money out, and that's just not necessarily just money, but information. If anybody's reaching out to your cell phone asking for either money, name, date of birth, social security number, anything information from you, you could always hang up and go straight to the source. What does that mean? So for example, if they're calling you and they telling you like, hey, ComEd is saying that you haven't paid your light bill, you're about to get your lights cut off, then it's too easy to hang up the phone, go on your phone, look up the ComEd app, verify that everything's correct. If it's not, then call them. You have the phone number right there. Don't always take the phone call that you receive as one of them. Take it as face value. Hear them out. Don't give any information, and definitely, you could always get a second opinion. If they're not scamming, they're gonna let you get off the phone. If you tell them like, hey, you know what? I don't feel comfortable sending you money to any phone number because you called me. I'm gonna hang up and call the ComEd right back to verify. They will probably start panicking like, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to get off the phone. That's the important part. Get off the phone, because they're just gonna talk you round and round, and then you're gonna fall into their trap. So non-public information, that's also something I want to tell you, is because the information that's not public should not be public, and you should not be giving it out to anybody. Kind of like for the example I gave you with the ComEd. If they're asking for past due amounts, make sure that the amounts are past due. However, if there are people reaching out to you like, hey, we have a loan opportunity for you, or we have this new solar panels that you could qualify for, or maybe you have a loan that you could qualify for, they're gonna ask for information such as that's not public, such as your birthday, full name. They might ask for social security number, address, phone number, any of that stuff. It's important not to give to anybody when they call. Sometimes banks will call, if you're going through like a loan process, like a mortgage process, they might call you and verify some information. However, it's important not to give any information out when you call. It's too easy to tell the person who calls you like, hey, you know what? I don't feel comfortable giving this information through this phone call. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to call my loan provider or my loan person that I've been working with at whichever bank it is. I'm going to call them back, and I'm going to give them the information if truly needed. That is the most secure way to keep your information intact and away from scammers. Is, again, you could always go to the source. It's nowadays they do AI calling, so they're going to change their name. I just seen a news story where somebody received a phone call from Apple saying that, hey, your credit card bill is past due. And the phone call that he received on the iPhone, it said Apple Inc. or something like that. So the elderly man that picked up the phone is like, oh, Apple's telling me I have a past due amount. Well, here, can I give you my debit card so I can pay that amount? Boom, debit card compromised. Scammers got their way. The elderly man lost some money. So again, it's too easy for you to receive that call like, oh, my credit card's due. Okay, give me a second. Hang up the call. Check your Apple credit card. See if it's actually past due. And if it's not, always report it. If you receive a call telling you like, hey, something's past due, it's way too easy for you to check that specific provider and see if you have something past due, because you either have a bill or you have a notice in your mail or on your cell phone or email, and you're gonna know if you have something past due. And if you don't, then that's your cue to not send any money to anybody. Okay, so more tips: paying with card versus tap. So I told you guys, well, maybe not all you guys, but if you guys watched last week's episode, I told you guys about how I got scammed, and how I got scammed was using ATM. And using that ATM, I was using my debit card and putting it in there, and the ATM had a shell around it. So they got my information from the chip when I inserted my card, and they got my keystrokes recorded. How they got it beats me. Not a scammer, but hey, they probably needed it more than me. So hopefully they got a good use out of that money. But however, in order to avoid that, you could always tap. I always talk about how our phones are like this double-edged sword, because not only could they provide ways for us to keep up with our accounts, but they also provide us ways to get scammed. But at the same time, they provide us ways to stay protected. Nowadays, it's too easy to tap your phone, and that is the most secure way. You know, you gotta make sure that your passcode is in there, or your face recognition, or your fingerprint, and then you use your phone to tap and pay. That is the most secure way. Also, if you have the ability, use the credit cards. What do I mean by this? Like, if you were able to pay it after using it, use the credit card, especially on purchases that you're doing online that you feel a little sketchy about, because credit cards are more than likely going to get you money back faster and more efficiently than the debit cards will. So keep that in mind, because whenever you're using your debit card to make these purchases, that's your money. So there's not as much a hurry for a company to get you your money back. When you're using a credit card, you're using their money. So again, now they have the urgency to get their money back, so that way they could get paid on it, or maybe just get it back because you got frauded or scammed out of that money. So definitely those two things: pay with the tap, or pay with the credit card if you're able to pay. Don't use your credit card if you're not able to pay it, because that's borrowed money. So you don't want to make little debts out of small purchases. So, or big debts out of small purchases. So filling out payment information while online shopping, I'm not a big fan of just storing my payment information online, not even in my personal computer, not even in my work computer. That's just too much of a risk for me, and a risk that I'm not willing to take. So I definitely will not include my I won't save my card information on my web pages, like I said, on my personal computer or work computer. I don't like that. I don't feel safe doing that at all. But if you guys do, by all means, do it. However, I suggest you filling out all the payment information every time you go online shopping. Okay, there's another way to prevent scams is staying on top of your account and your credit report. Definitely use your phone for your advantage. Check your bank accounts. Check your bank account day in and day out. I can't tell you the amount of times that I wake up and I like to look at my bank account. One, to either tell me that, hey, you got to go to work, rebuild this bank account today, or just be happy that I still have the money that I had the night before in my bank account the day after. Because sometimes, bills come out, and then you get a little sad, like, oh, my balance went down. I had to go to work to pay more bills, and so on and so on. But sometimes the balance is still there. So not only does that make me happy, but that also tells me that I have not been scammed. My money is still there for me to use, and nobody else has used it without my permission. Another tip: notify the authorities. I can't stress this enough, because when I got scammed, I didn't notify the authorities, and I feel I'm a big believer that if I would have notified the authorities, it probably would have went a little bit different for me. Again, you guys could go back and watch the older videos on our YouTube and hear the story, but because I didn't report it to the cops, I guess the bank thought, because the bank didn't give me my money back, they saw it as a common transaction. But since I didn't report it to the cops, they probably would have been able to get like the footage from the 7-Eleven where I withdrew the money from. They probably would have been able to like give me a report so I could submit it to my bank, so that way I could prove it to them that it wasn't me, but I didn't. So definitely, if you do get scammed, your very first step should be contacting your local authorities, even if it's a local police. And also, on that same topic, contact your local authorities because one, they can spread the word around. Put in a police blotter, write a report, get the information out there. And especially there was that actually works because there was an FBI scam that was happening a couple months ago in a specific town. I believe it was like in one of the Dakotas, and they kept reporting it to the police. And after like 10 reports, they were able to track down who was doing that fraud activity, and they were able to catch them. So you'd be surprised how really helpful notifying your local authorities is. And on that same aspect, I want to tell you, which this is how I'm finding out about the new scams, is notify your local news agency too, your local news channel. I can't tell you the amount of times, the number of stories I've seen on like ABC, not necessarily Chicago, but ABCs of like the New Yorks, Californias, Philadelphia. When I'm scrolling through TikTok, they come up on my feed, and I see the stories about people getting scammed, reaching out to the news channel, and then they have their own investigative reporting that helps. For example, there was this lady. This was ABC Chicago. She had hired this mariachi band, or like this musical performing group. Then she didn't hear from them for about a week after sending them a deposit, and then they canceled on her last minute. However, she reached out to the news. The news did a piece on them, and by the time the piece aired, they had a follow up the week after saying that the musical group refunded the lady's money. So this could definitely get the word out there and could also help you get your money back. Same thing happened in California. This lady had gotten scammed by the people that installed her solar panels. They reached out to their news channel, and they were getting help. Their attorneys were talking to them. They were like, at this point, we don't have any update, but we are trying to help them to see if they could get out, because the solar panel company had given her like some redlining terms. And it was like 3 years in that she had these solar panels, and this company was basically, she owed more than what the house was worth, and they were going to take over her residence, and the news agency did not let that happen. So definitely report to the authorities and report to your local news agency. You don't know who else you might be saving when doing so. But that's about pretty much all I have for you guys today. I always say nobody cares more about your money than you do, which is true. Nobody cares more about your money than you do. So it's up to you to stay on top of it. It's up to you to identify these red flags, and it's up to you to keep it safe, because if you don't keep it safe, nobody else will. So with that being said, you guys have an amazing rest of your evening, an amazing week. Although I seen it's supposed to be a little cooler this week, like in the 50s and 60s. But if it isn't, enjoy it. I won't be here. So with that being said, I'll see you guys next week. Next week, it might be a late one. Might not, because I come back Tuesday night. So there might not be a live, or there might be an early one. Who knows? Stay tuned. But other than that, you guys have a great week. Remember, nobody cares more about your money than you do, because it's a matter of life or death. All right? Take it easy. Bye. For my little hand, I'm going to keep waving until I end this, if I find the end stream button here. Bye.